Hello, everyone. Welcome back to The Breakdown. I'm your host, Sandra Babu-Boateng. In 1963, the Prime Minister of a small, scrappy, struggling Southeast Asian island, Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, stepped off a plane in Accra, Ghana. And what he saw, it left him shook. Ghana was glowing, the first sub-Saharan African nation to gain independence, rich in gold, cocoa, timber, talent, and ambition. The streets buzzed with hope. The air, electric. We had just pulled off a peaceful revolution. We were building dams, universities, motorways. And at the helm was one of the most charismatic and visionary leaders of the era, Kwame Nkrumah. Back then, the numbers told the story. Ghana's GDP per capita was $857 in present-day money. Singapore's, just $428, nearly half. It made sense. After all, Singapore was just the small size of Accra, Ghana's capital. Ghana was the third richest country in Africa at that time, right behind South Africa and Egypt. Lee Kuan Yew later wrote in his memoirs that Ghana had it all: resources, talent, energy, even swagger. He left Ghana inspired and went back to Singapore, determined not to let his country fall behind. Fast forward to today. Singapore now ranks as the second richest nation in the world, not in Asia, in the world, with a GDP per capita of over $153,000. Ghana, still stuck near the bottom of the global list, number 163, with a GDP per capita of merely $2,200. Now, that's not just a gap, that's a chasm. Today we're breaking down what happened. Where did Ghana go wrong? And more importantly, what can Ghana and the rest of Africa learn from Singapore's remarkable rise from rags to riches? Because, guys, let's be clear. Singapore didn't succeed because it had more. It succeeded because it did more with less. We're going to break it down. But before we do, please remember to subscribe to our channel and join our family here. And also hit the notification bell so you don't miss another critical conversation like the one we're about to have. All right, so let's roll back the clock, shall we? The year is 1960. Ghana is fresh off independence, bursting with promise. We had gold in the ground, cocoa in the fields, and a port city rising on the coast. Literacy was climbing. Infrastructure was expanding. The Akosombo Dam, a bold, modernist dream, was under construction. We were the hope of the continent, the richest West African nation with a GDP per capita of $857. Singapore, meanwhile, they had just been kicked out of Malaysia and was now on their own. They had no gold, no oil, not even fresh water. They had to import it from Malaysia. They were dealing with ethnic riots, gang violence, joblessness, and crushing poverty. And yet, here we are, roughly 60 years later, and a completely different tale to tell. So what happened? Let's start with the big one, leadership. Lee Kuan Yew wasn't chasing vibes or applause. He wasn't trying to trend. He was trying to build. And he did it with ruthless discipline and laser-sharp focus. He once said, and I quote, "I will make this a first world country in a third world region." And he meant every word of it. See, under his watch, ministers were paid well. But if you got caught in corruption, straight to jail, no long talk. Civil servants were hired for their skills, not their tribe, not their connections, not their gender. Every project had a plan. Every plan had a target. and every target was tracked. See, accountability wasn't a buzzword, right? It was the culture. And it worked. Because today, Singapore ranks as the 5th least corrupt country in the world. Ghana, we're sitting at 70th. And honestly, we're too comfortable there. In Ghana, we've often treated leadership like a popularity contest. We romanticize charisma and revolutionary credentials. But governance, institution building, long-term planning, that gets lost in the sauce. Now let's be honest. Nkrumah, he had a vision. He had a plan. He built Akosombo Dam, Tema Port, motorways, Black Star Square. He laid down concrete vision and plan for the nation. We're still living off the legacy he started. But after him, coups, instability, interrupted progress, a complete breakdown in continuity. What followed were governments obsessed with PR cycles instead of development cycles. Year of roads, year of return. Catchy, sure. But where are the 5-year plans, the 10-year targets, the 30-year visions? That's why our roads sit half finished. Our hospitals wait 8 years to be completed because someone's party logo isn't on the foundation stone. It's politics over progress. Take this, for example. When a new administration came into power this year, they had the perfect opportunity to say, you know what? The Year of Return was a brilliant campaign. It brought global attention, boosted tourism, and reconnected the diaspora to Ghana in powerful ways. Let's build on that momentum. But no. Instead of scaling what worked, we abandoned it and moved on to something entirely different. New slogan, new branding. That's the problem. Every administration wants to leave their stamp, even if it means scrapping initiatives that were already working. Progress gets sidelined for political credit. And so you have to ask, where does that leave us as a nation, aside from always starting from scratch? I'm just saying. Singapore's leaders thought in generations, but unfortunately ours and many African leaders get stuck in election terms. 4 years, maybe 8. Then let's reset. And frankly, it shows. Let's talk about education. You see, Singapore, they looked around and said, we may not have oil, we may not have gold or cocoa, but we've got minds. We've got brilliant minds. So they said, we will build a gold mine of talent and make human capital our number one export. They overhauled the entire education system, focusing on science, math, engineering, and tech. Schools were rigorous. Teachers were trained like elite professionals. Students were streamed into industries that the country could actually use and needed. Today, Singapore ranks number 1 in global education rankings. And their students top international exams. Ghana? Well, we introduced free SHS, senior high school, and that's something to applaud. But let's talk facts. Classrooms are overcrowded. Cheating scandals are quite routine. And thousands of graduates are unemployed. We're producing degrees, but not skills. And let's be honest, you can't build a modern economy on certificates alone, can you? Now here's where Singapore really pulled away. They had no oil, no diamonds, not even farmland. But what they did, they had strategic vision. They literally looked at their map, which was wedged between India and China, and turned that geography into a superpower. They built one of the busiest, most efficient ports in the world. Then they said, why stop there? Let's become a financial hub, a tech hub, a legal arbitration hub. And they didn't just dream it, they backed it up with investor-friendly policies, rock-solid institutions, and zero tolerance for inefficiency. They made it easy for global companies to do business and hard for corruption and bureaucracies to get in the way. But here's the thing. Ghana has a strategic location advantage too. We sit right on the Atlantic, perfectly positioned between West and Central Africa. We're English speaking, politically stable, home to a bustling capital city, and connected to a vibrant global diaspora. We could literally be the gateway to West Africa, a hub for trade, for finance, logistics, and even diplomacy. But instead, we've been exporting raw cocoa for over a century and still import chocolate. We mine gold and buy jewelry made in Dubai. We celebrate IMF bailouts and forget to ask, what's our actual economic vision? You see, Singapore has a 15-year industrial plan. That's right. 15 years. That's how far in advance they think. Ghana's development strategy changes with every new government. Sometimes every new minister, let's be real. That's the difference. One country uses location as leverage. The other hasn't quite figured out how to turn geography into power. In the 1960s, Singapore was fractured by race and religion. Chinese, Malay, Indian. It was a tinderbox. But Lee Kuan Yew made national unity a non-negotiable priority. He introduced ethnic quotas in housing, penalized hate speech, and built one school system for all. The message, it was clear. Singaporean first. Now Ghana is peaceful, and that's something we must protect. But beneath the surface, tribal and partisan politics still shape everything, from appointments to development allocations. You see, unity cannot be assumed. It must be engineered. And that's what Singapore did. So what's the moral of this story? Well, let's break it all down, plain and simple. Resources are not the answer. Strategy is. Ghana had more than Singapore, and it still does. But we didn't use it right. Leadership isn't about charisma. It's about competence. Ghana needs fewer campaigners and more nation builders. Education must meet economic needs. Stop producing what we can absorb. It's simple. Corruption must be treated like cancer. Not just being managed, but removed completely. Continuity, it matters. Because you can't build anything real if every government hits the reset button. And national identity must come first. Ghanaian before partisan, tribal, or religious identities. Now, let's make it real. Where do we go from here? What can Ghana actually start doing right now? Well, first, we need a development plan that survives elections. Lock it into law if we have to. Put it in a constitution. But most importantly, make it independent of political parties. Here's the thing. One of the key reasons Singapore is able to maintain long-term strategies regardless of who's in charge is because they've built a strong, nonpartisan institutions that outlast governments. Let me break that down. The Economic Development Board leads Singapore's industrial strategy. The Urban Redevelopment Authority handles urban planning 30, sometimes even 50 years out. The Monetary Authority of Singapore governs financial and monetary policy with long-term discipline. These institutions aren't run by politicians, no. They're run by experts, technocrats with deep experience and a clear mandate, a clear vision. So even if the leadership at the top changes, the national vision stays consistent. Isn't that practical? Now, to be fair, Singapore has also enjoyed remarkable political continuity under the People's Action Party, which has governed since 1959. That's helped with long-term policy implementation, minimal reversal of national programs, and stability that reassures both citizens and investors. Of course, one-party dominance has its criticisms. And let's be honest, in Africa, we've seen both sides of that coin. From Rwanda to Uganda, these are leaders who've stayed in power for decades. Some have transformed their nations. Others, not so much. So it's not the number of years that matters. It's what you do with them. And truly, it's a case-by-case scenario. But one thing is clear. Ghana needs continuity. We can't keep starting from scratch every 4 or 8 years. Number 2, Ghana can also work to make education practical and future-ready. Right? Let's align our education system with the real needs of Ghana's economy and the global workforce at large. Link senior high school and college education directly to sectors like agriculture, tech, renewable energy, logistics, manufacturing, and more. And here's a bold idea. Bold idea. Make Ghana a hub for digital skills. There is a growing global demand for tech talent, developers, analysts, cybersecurity experts. Why not position Ghana the way India did 2 decades ago? Train young people intentionally for the digital economy and connect them to companies like Amazon, Cisco, and Google for remote, high-paying work. We have the youth. We have the language advantage. Let's build the infrastructure. And number 3, Ghana needs to double down on urban planning. Accra could easily be the Singapore of Africa, but only if we plan like Singapore, not just build, but plan. Fix traffic congestion, build resilient housing, create efficient public transport, protect green spaces, enforce zoning laws. This is how cities attract investment and become magnets for talent and innovation. And number 4, rebuild public trust. Ghanaians are tired of the scandals, the impunity, the recycling of failed leaders. If we're truly serious about development, we need to get serious about fighting corruption. No PR campaigns, no empty press conferences. We need to set real examples, clean house, make it clear that corruption has consequences, no matter who you are. And I have to give President Mahama some props here because he has made some bold moves so far to tackle corruption since taking office. And number 5, we need to play to our strengths. You see, Ghana is sitting on a gold mine. And I'm not just talking about underground, but above it too. We are politically stable. We are English speaking. We are strategically located as a gateway to West Africa. We are rich in natural resources and home to a highly engaged, influential diaspora community. That is a killer combination if we leverage it right. So where do we go from here? In 1963, Lee Kuan Yew came to Ghana and saw a star, a shining star, a nation with energy, with ambition, and potential. He left inspired and determined not to let Singapore fall behind. 60 years later, they didn't just catch up, they lapped us. But here's the truth. Our story isn't over, much like every other African nation. Ghana still has what it takes. We have one of the brightest, most creative populations on the continent. Our land is rich with resources from gold to cocoa to oil to tech-ready youth. And our position in West Africa is a gateway, not just to trade, but to influence. The question now is not, can we rise? The question is, will we choose to? Will we build institutions that outlast politics? Will we demand leadership that serves the people, not just the party? Will we invest in skills, not slogans? Will we choose progress over pride? Because real transformation doesn't come from vibes. It comes from vision, from discipline, and from follow through. We don't need another campaign. We need a commitment. Ghana has the blueprint. Singapore proved that it's possible. Now it's our turn. Thanks for watching The Breakdown. I'm Sandra Babu-Boateng. And if this episode moved you, be sure to share it and drop a thought in the comment to let me know what you think. Let's start a national conversation, not just about what's wrong, but about what's next. What does the future look like? I believe the future of Ghana isn't written in the stars. It's written in our decisions, starting today. So thanks for joining me. Until next time, take care.